Guys, what's happening? Welcome back to another episode of We the People, where the people come for the truth, and the truth shall set you free. Now, listen, we're coming up to the midterm elections here soon, right? And, the Democrats have been fighting President Trump all the way. And as a conservative media host, media outlet, it's my job to bring you the truth. All right? And the truth of the matter is that we dodged a huge bullet. This right here, up on the screen right now, is the Baku Initiative on Human Development for Climate Resilience. Excuse me. My friend Roman on here is going to explain to you what the agenda was and what the underlying principles of this were. And to remind you how we dodged a huge bullet. And we're coming up to these midterm elections and understand something, that if the Democrats get power, we're going to spend the rest of our time dealing with impeachments of President Trump instead of him being able to get what he needs to get done for us. We're going to lose it. And we can't lose it. We must keep conservatism alive. So stay true to conservatism. That's my new saying. Stay true to conservatism. Now let's check this out from Roman from Epic Times, and I wanted you to understand the bullet that we did dodge here.
This particular conference was held. Now, let me give you a brief breakdown of what this latest climate change initiative actually means and what it'll mean for the citizens in countries around the world moving forward if their country still happens to be committed to the UN's climate change agenda. And of course, by the way, if you appreciate content like this, which sometimes takes 1/2/3 weeks to put together, I hope you do take a super quick moment to smash those like and subscribe buttons so that this video can reach ever more people via the YouTube algorithm.
Now, do me a favor. You heard Roman. I really appreciate it. If you smash that like and subscribe and become part of the family here and come here for the truth, man. Anything I tell you, it's the truth. You can investigate it for yourself. I'm not going to bring you no fake material, fake news. I'm not doing that. I'm going to bring you what you need in order to know how to mentally arm yourself for what could come if Trump loses power, if the Republicans lose power. This is the initiatives that we're going back to if the Democrats get power again. And if they get power again, they're going to do everything they can not to lose power again.
If you happen to have been in Baku for this year's conference and you opened up the booklet that contained the agenda for COP29, you would find something called the Baku Initiative on Human Development for Climate Resilience. And in the agenda, it's described as follows, quote, an initiative to deliver various outcomes in human development, including catalyzing investment in education, skills, health, and well-being, in particular for children and youth, establishing COP-to-COP continuity, and enhancing environmental literacy through education standards. Now, thus far, as of today, there's been no draft released showing exactly what this initiative will entail point by point, but there are a few context clues that we can use by reading between the lines. After the COP29 event, you had a joint statement that was put out in support of the Baku Initiative. You can see it up on your screen, and this was put out by the countries who actually attended the event. And the statement was also a bit light on details, but but it clearly hit on the priorities of the initiative, which is to obtain more money and to establish more, you can say, soft power to influence the party nations. Here is part of what that joint statement said, quote, scaling up age and gender responsive climate finance for investments in human development, including education, health, social protection, decent jobs, and skills development, while promoting synergies and efficiencies in funding through multi-stakeholder partnerships and coordination. Then the statement, it goes on to list the areas in which they're aiming to cooperate. Quote, continuing to support the mobilization and catalyzation of climate finance that is age and gender responsive to promote strategic initiatives in education, health, social protection, employment, and skills development. Okay, so this was from the joint statement from the countries who were at the actual event. Alongside the statement,
mobilization and catalyzation. So they want to mobilize it everywhere, and they want to catalyze it. They're going to make us like cattle. You break that word catalyze down, you come up with the word cattle, right? Like a herd of I'm sorry, like cattle, like cows. Cows, right? That's what we're gonna be like. And if you ain't never read, there's a book out there, right? And it's called The 12 Learned Elders of Zion, or the 12 Learned Elders of Zion. And in this book, and now I want to let you know, this was written in the 1800s or the 1700s by a Jewish scholar in Russia. And at the time, the Jews were being persecuted in Russia, and this book was destroyed many times, but it got out, and you can now get it from the Library of Congress, and it's actually become a little bit more famous, so I think you might be able to find it in other places. When I got it, someone ordered it from the Library of Congress, and I had a copy of it, but it got confiscated from me. So, that book there calls us goyim, G-O-Y-M, goyim, which means cattle. Just to remind you of that. Yes, and the 12 Learned Elders of Zion is the name of the book, and it talks about the snakehead and how to integrate within public society, to integrate within society itself, to where that you can't be found, that you can't be persecuted, you can't be anything like that. You put your bloodline in where it matters strategically. That's weird. That's sinister, bro. That's sinister in itself.
You had this document here that was released alongside it from the UN, containing the Baku Initiative's guiding principles. And in it, you have principle number 3, which is titled, Invest in Integrating Quality Climate Change Education at all levels and regularly assessing student competencies to address climate change. And that particular principle is a little bit long, but I'll read to you most of it just so you can get an idea of what they're actually planning to institute. Quote, this principle aims to ensure that all learners, including children, youth, adults, in particular girls and women, migrants, and vulnerable groups, acquire essential knowledge, skills, values, and attitudes on climate action and resilience, addressing the cognitive, social, emotional, and behavioral domains of learning. It seeks to integrate climate change education across all relevant subject areas, including social, economic, and environmental dimensions at all levels of formal, informal, and non-formal education and learning, including knowledge and values from indigenous systems and practices, from early childhood to technical and vocational education and training, and higher education. Achieving this requires collaboration on greening curriculum, schools, teacher training and education systems, capacities and communities. Assessment plays a key role in guiding educational priorities. It is crucial for education systems to gather data on learning outcomes related to environmental sustainability and climate change. Through the integration of climate literacy into national and international assessments, countries can monitor progress against benchmarks and learn from the practices of top-performing systems. Now, that is comprehensive. One of the main principles of the Baku Initiative is to establish a global curriculum of education so that children all the way up through adulthood across the globe are taught the latest in curated UN-approved climate science, again, from elementary school all the way up through grad school, which, as a matter of strategy, is a great principle. It's an effective way to ensure that future generations across the whole globe support these climate-related agendas. But if you're a rational person watching this video, you might be asking yourself, how could the UN even set up a global education curriculum? I mean, maybe for developed countries, it might be easy, but in developing countries, wouldn't it require massive investment in both technology as well as education infrastructure? And the answer is that, yes, it would.
And that's where people like George Soros comes in, not Elon Musk. George Soros. See, Elon Musk used his money to get us away from this. George Soros, and that feud needs to stop. These are two grown-ass men. It needs to stop. President Trump, you are the president of these United States. It needs to stop. Now, like I was saying, Elon used his money to make sure that this didn't get us. Right? And Soros uses his money to make this happen. Putting the two and two together. We can't allow someone like Pete Buttigieg or Kamala Harris or Governor Westmoreland of Maryland, right? Don't let him be president. He sucks as a governor, so I can only imagine what he's going to do as president, exactly what he's told to do. That's what he's going to do. Westmoreland is going to do exactly what he is told to do. Because he's a Democrat. And Democrats already showed their hand. If you don't do what you're told, then you're out of here. It don't matter if you're president or not. They got rid of Joe Biden, bro. He was president of the United States. And he sat on his camera and read a card. Yeah, I'm stepping down after this and da 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 da. The whole, you ain't been president the whole time. Don't even matter if you step down or not, Gene. And Stephen A. Smith, he's talking about running for Democrat. Don't do it, Steve. Don't ruin your career, bro. You got a great deal with ESPN, and you're a great man. Don't ruin your career, bro. Because once you become president, they're going to screw you. They're going to screw you. You're going to do what you're told, or you're done for. So, if you think you're going to step into the Democratic Party like Trump stepped into the Republican Party and shook it up, and you think you're going to step into the Democratic Party and shake it up, you're in for a rude awakening. They're going to shake you up.
But don't worry. because this principle number 3 of the Baku Initiative, it ties in perfectly with another initiative that the UN is working on, something that they call DPI, Digital Public Infrastructure. In 2023, the UN published their DPI playbook. You can see it up on your screen, and this book acts as basically a guide to all countries looking to kickstart their own DPI program. And within that booklet, here is how the UN itself officially defines DPI. Quote, "We recognize DPI as a set of shared digital systems which are secure and interoperable, built on open standards and specifications to deliver and provide equitable access to public and or private services at societal scale, and are governed by enabling rules to drive development, inclusion, innovation, trust, and competition, and respect human rights and fundamental freedoms." Which sounds great, but if you take a moment and you set aside these superfluous words in that statement, what the UN is essentially trying to establish is a singular, searchable, centralized platform of identification and data collection to be adopted by every nation. And this platform, it would include every individual person's identifiable information. In other words, DPI is a plan to implement a global digital ID program, a program that the UN admits in other documents will eventually link not just to someone's general identity, but also to things like their banking and credit card information, their social media accounts, their credit scores, and anything else useful that can be digitized and associated with a specific person. For instance, in August of 2023, the UN published another DPI report, you can see it up on your screen, writing that the new platform will help to manage crises as well as achieve the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. Here's specifically what it says. Quote, "With a DPI approach, countries can advance a range of development objectives and respond better during crisis. Although each piece of DPI can have an impact on its own, the interaction of this infrastructure can unlock the most significant impacts in countries and across the Sustainable Development Goals." Oh, I'm so excited. This is going to be so good, the DPI. The same month that the UN released this document, they released a separate 6-page document which acknowledged that they are currently way off track from being able to achieve their 17 Sustainable Development Goals before the year 2030, and they called in this document for a pivot toward more intense initiatives so that they can actually achieve all their goals by the year 2030. And included among these intense initiatives that can help them get back on track was DPI, Digital Public Infrastructure. They say in this document that DPI is the key breakthrough that will provide the necessary momentum to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. And they wrote that their plan is to have DPI implemented in at least 100 countries by the year 2030. And in order to achieve 100 countries, their first plan is something called the 50 in 5 initiative. This program, which was launched last year, is working to get at least 50 developing countries to design, launch, and scale their own digital public infrastructure within the next 5 years. Then they can use that infrastructure to plug into the global network. Now, up on your screen is the website for the 50 in 5 initiative, which includes clips from countries sharing their own experiences with DPI. As an example, you have a video from Bangladesh, which includes a clip featuring Anir Chowdhury from the UN Development Program. Take a look.
By working together on DPIs, we also have specifics in each country across health, across education, across climate action. So I think we'll certainly get there much more reliably and much more quickly. We hope that the 15-5 campaign would enable us to get there faster.
Bangladesh is leading by example, showcasing the transformative power of digital public infrastructure, and by participating in 50 in 5 are working with other countries to accelerate their own DPI journeys.
Oh, how can we be part of DPI? We want to be the 50 in 5? No, we don't. We absolutely do not. We want to be the 1 in 50. We don't want to be the 50 in 5. We want to be the 1 in 50. The one that doesn't join part of the 50.
Again, it seems like all all these different seemingly disparate UN initiatives really do work together seamlessly. For instance, at the same time that you have the Baku initiative and this DPI infrastructure network being built around the world, you also have UNESCO, which is the UN educational, scientific, and cultural organization. They recently put out a plan, you can see it up on your screen, to regulate social media and online communications in order to, as they say, clamp down on false information and conspiracy theories. In fact, to that end, UNESCO published a report, again, you can see it up on your screen, titled Guidelines for the Governance of Digital Platforms. And this report, it suggests imposing global policies to stop the spread of various forms of speech while, at the same time, promoting other forms of speech, such as cultural diversity and gender equality type of messages. And of course, this type of thing would be made possible by DPI, the digital public infrastructure that is now being built in at least 50 developing nations around the whole world. In other words, if you happen to be a poor person living in a developing country and in the next 5 years you want to access internet connectivity, you might only be able to do so if you sign up for their digital ID program. But then once you do, you'll be subject to censorship, surveillance, and possible recrimination if you say the wrong thing. Now, this is not happening yet, but if you look down the road and you look at the different components that are currently being built, it's a safe assumption to make that this is where all these initiatives are headed. And by the way, it's worth mentioning that the Biden-Harris administration was on board with the DPI program. In fact, in March 2023, you can see that the National Cybersecurity Strategy called for development of a digital ID ecosystem as one of its strategic objectives, because enhanced digital ID solutions and these types of infrastructure can enable a more innovative, equitable, safe, and efficient digital economy. In that statement, they also cited the billions of dollars that the U.S. government fraudulently handed out during the COVID times in forms of relief as evidence that a more secure system of ID needs to be in place. However, the incoming Trump administration does not appear to be
right. If we'd have had that digital infrastructure in place, we wouldn't have had to worry about theft of money and stuff like that, even though they just sent it wherever they wanted. It wasn't the fact that the people committed theft, it's that they allowed the theft to be committed so they could do this.
On board with the DPI plan, meaning that depending on your viewpoint of this UN global digital fingerprint plan, we're either going to be missing out or we just dodged the bullet. It just depends on how you view things. And so that is where we currently are. The Baku initiative is just the latest iteration of the climate change plan being pushed forward by the UN for the last 30 years. Included in the Baku initiative is principle number 3, which has global curriculum being taught to kids around the world that is the approved climate change science that the UN wants to get out there to the broader populace. In order to achieve this, you have a separate initiative called DPI, which is establishing this type of infrastructure in different nations, which will give them great connectivity and technological infrastructure, but the cost to that will be this digital ID that everyone will have to sign up for in order to access the internet, essentially. UNESCO put out a report saying that they will be using this type of infrastructure to police speech online, and while the Biden and Harris administration were on board with this and actually going along with it, the Trump administration seems to not be on board with it and pulling out of as many of these programs as possible. And it's worth mentioning that other developed Western nations appear to also be pulling out of the UN climate initiative as well, although it's not clear whether DPI is one of the initiatives they're pulling out of, but at least if you look at COP29, it does appear they're generally pulling back their support. So that's where we currently stand in regards to the Baku initiative, the Trump administration, as well as how it relates to the UN's climate agenda. If you
all right, guys, so listen, that it's very important that we get this message out, right? And the reason why is because if they're very slick and sly in how they do this and how they write these initiatives up and how they implement these initiatives to make it seem like they're not that big of a deal. It's okay. It's just part of the new infrastructure. Everybody's got to get down with it. You know, you got to be part, just like this AI thing. We're so far into this AI thing now that there is really no turning back. So it's just a matter of time. And instead of stepping up and speaking out again about it, we didn't, and now we're too far in. and we're just going to go further down a rabbit hole. So let's see where that brings us. But we're not part of this world agenda right now. We're part of an AI world agenda at this moment. Just to make you aware of that. But this is some cult-like stuff, man. The Democratic Party is a cult. They want you. They're trying. That is socialistic Marxist ways. That's what that is. They want everybody to work in equal share. That's Marxist ways. They want everybody to work in equal share. I'm sorry, socialist ways. They want everybody to work in equal share, but only the government profits from it. You get your bare minimum to live. And they're even they're raising the prices of things, but dropping the living wage. Now that Trump's got back in office, the living wage is going up a little bit because of the tax breaks and all that stuff. But the what you call them, and the prices of stuff are going down quite significantly. So understand where you stand at, and you better know which better. The Democrats or the Republicans. The Republicans are representing the working class right now, and they're sticking to it. Now, all they need to do is get their heads out of their asses and get on codifying these executive orders and making these Doge cuts into law and all that. Like, it just needs to be done and get it done. And the bickering needs to stop. The public bickering. If you got something to say to each other, man, go behind closed doors and say what you got to say. You got to skip for a reason. Go use it. But the public shouldn't be knowing your business. And y'all have a great one. Thank you for watching. Make sure you hit that subscribe and like, and make sure you come back for some more of the truth. Stay true to conservatism. I'll see you back at We the People. Thanks for watching. I'm out.